Dana White was involved in a domestic violence incident with his wife in Mexico over the holidays. He is seen on video in Mexico slapping his wife. Yes, she hit him first. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Dana White has said that. It doesn't matter what my wife does. I had no business raising my hand to my wife.
Yeah.
He has said it doesn't matter.
Facts.
And I totally agree with that. But Dana White said something yesterday that was really, really, and the word that keeps coming to mind is it's really compelling, because is Dana White correct about this kind of punishment?
We've had plenty of discussions internally with Ari, ESPN. Nobody's happy. Nobody's happy about this, you know. Neither am I. But it happened. And I have to deal with it. And what is my punishment? Here's my punishment. I got to walk around for however long I live. Is it 10.4 years or is it another 25 years? And I gotta, this is how I'm labeled now. My other punishment is that, you know, I'm sure a lot of people, whether it be media, fighters, friends, acquaintances who had respect for me, might not have respect for me now. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life that are way more of a punishment than what? I take a 30-day, 60-day absence? That's not a punishment to me. The punishment is that I did it, and now I have to deal with it.
Now, number one, the thing that really bothers me there is, what did he not say? What did he not say? He not one time mentioned his wife, or that, hey, the punishment is that I have to deal with, you know, I wake up every day and I look at my wife and I realize what I've done to her. He never said that. That really stuck out to me. But, and I know you're passionate about this, Jake, but I actually think he's right on.
Yeah.
If the UFC fires Dana White, is that punishing Dana White, or is that punishing the UFC and its fighters?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, so if we break this down from a business sense, it's punishing the whole organization, which would include the fighters, which would include just everybody involved, because Dana White does, in fact, do a phenomenal job at what he does, right? Like, it's not uncouth or bad to say the guy's really good at what he does. But
no doubt.
I think the trouble is that the UFC is not yet big enough the way, like, the NFL, let's say, is big enough to where if you smack your wife on tape, you have to have an automatic suspension. You have to have these certain things that just have to play out, and then we can talk about you doing this again. But again, on the other side, in the NFL, when an executive does something, we don't really hear about it. They just disappear for 3 months, and then they come back, right? So it's a little different that way. But the point is that the UFC is this smaller. I'm not saying the UFC is small, but when you compare the UFC to the core four, it's small. So the UFC is in a position where, hey, Dana White's been the face of our organization for forever. He is the name that you associate with the UFC, and he does run everything. And yeah, he is damn good at it.
Yes, he is.
I do agree with Dana in this sense that, hey, putting me on a leave of absence, it doesn't hurt me because I have more money than I need, right? And it just doesn't hurt me. Like, he's right. It hurts the UFC. I do agree also with what he said, that I have to live with this the rest of my life. But what I disagree with is that somehow is the punishment, right? Living with your actions is just the fact of life. Hey, you were speeding, you got a ticket. Well, I got to live with that now. Like, that's just life, dude. That's not like, hey, you were punished so severely and now you've learned your lesson. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
There's like a middle ground.
But I think that here's what I give Dana White credit for. He owned this completely. He's never once tried to spin this. He's never once said, hey, no, he said I was wrong. I should never have hit my wife. He has said that I have admitted complete and total guilt, taken total responsibility for my actions. He has absolutely done that. He's talked about how, you know, that him and his wife have had really good introspective conversations out of this. I totally get that. But we'll never get away from that videotape. That's the problem. And I think in a league where you've had criminality, where you've had drug abuse, where you've had your greatest fighter ever, arguably, and John Jones, like, running from the cops.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor, you know, throwing this barricade through a window, punching somebody in a bar. Like, you just can't have this. And at what point does the UFC take a step away from violence outside of the octagon? I don't know what that is because they're not doing that here, right? And again, it just strikes me that Dana never said, well, I got to look at my... I can't imagine how I would feel if I were Dana White. And to your point and to Dana's point, the public humiliation is a significant punishment. But Ray Rice never worked again. You look at some of the other domestic violence people, they've never worked again.
But what was the difference? And I think this is crucial to the conversation. What was the difference between, let's use Ray Rice, right? The difference was he's a player. He's an employee, if you will. He's not upper management running things. And I think that's a really important distinction. When you're upper management, there's a higher level of accountability that should be taking place that clearly is not taking place here. The reason it's not taking place brings me right back to, hey, the UFC is smaller. The UFC knows who it plays to. The UFC isn't playing to the housewife in New Jersey.
That's right.
The UFC is playing to men who empathize with Dana.
They're playing to men that are essentially 18 to 49 years old, would be my guess.
Yeah.
And they are playing to men who really like the high testosterone, knock him the F out. That's who they're playing to.
You know what Dana's doing here? Which I think it's low key, but it's if you're him, I don't know what else you would be doing. I think it's kind of smart if you're in Dana's shoes, but like he's playing the, hey, yeah, I did wrong by my wife and I'm the husband and I got to fix this type deal. Like he's low key playing that card. And I think that resonates with a lot of dudes out there. And I think that Dana is a master and commander at fixing PR issues. And he's doing that here.
Yep. Ken Williams says, never hit a woman no matter what. Walk away, dude, always. And he has said that. Absolutely. Self-defined punishments are never enough.
And that's the trouble. See, that's what I agree with, Boyd. Like what is, I think it's financial. You have to hurt him financially for it to be proper. He
is not just the president of the UFC. He is a significant shareholder in the UFC. Like he is...
It's his whole world.
I mean, he runs the MMA world. I mean, he is much more than just an employee. And I think you have to keep that in mind. Boyd says, didn't say I'm sorry. No, he didn't. Salty Drunk, good morning to you. Salty's a member of the show. How do you know he hasn't had that conversation with his wife? Oh, I'm sure he has, but that's not the point. It doesn't matter what he's done behind the scenes. Right now, he's in a PR fight for his life.
Yeah.
And if Dana White had stood up on that dais yesterday during this press conference and said, yeah, I looked my wife in the face and it was really painful for me. And we cried together and when he slapped his wife hard, dude. Like if this was just, hey, you slapped me, I'm going to put my arm out to stop. He full on slapped her.
Yeah, he dropped her.
And I want to hear Dana White say, I looked at my wife and, I talked to my wife and it was really painful and I can't believe I did that. And the worst punishment I have is now for the rest of my life, I have to live with the fact that I hurt my wife. And we talked about that and I have to look her in the face every day knowing what I've done. I almost would be like, okay, yeah, that's the punishment you get. By the way, you're fined $1 million and suspended for 30 days. That's what I would have done.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done. And you can't tell me the UFC world stops spinning for 30 days. Salty also says people make mistakes and own them. True. And he says, I have a case of 4X Gold and 6 Papa Murphy's pizzas.
Well.
But my man, here's the problem. You owe me a case of 4X Gold that you've never paid off.
Yeah, dude, you're kind of on the duck season vibe right now with the 4X Gold, like
you're on the duck season vibe.
I mean, you haven't come through with the, with the beer. You haven't got that international drop shipping package sent out. That's what I'm talking about.
The international drop shipping. Come on now.
What?
Come on now.
What?
Where did you pull drop shipping?
I don't know. Where do you pull Snoop Dogg at 5:30 in the morning?
Well,
I don't know.
That's because I'm talented. Dallin says, speeding, I feel like, is just a few. You get a ticket every once in a while, and then you pay it. Are you going to speed later? Probably. Yeah. Dallin says, can Dana White be fired? Doesn't he own the UFC? It was sold, but he is a significant stakeholder in the UFC.
But again, there's no incentive for them to fire him. The conversation isn't firing him, with all due respect. And that's what you have to understand about this. This is different than, baseball or basketball or football. Like, this is not a core four, with all due respect to the UFC. The UFC is a niche sport that is huge in its niche and dominates that particular category. But the problem is it's incestuous, right? You have one guy who's the face of the whole thing, that runs everything, that makes everything go. It would be like taking the gas out of a car. They would have to figure out how we would move forward without Dana White. That's a big thing.
Yeah, Severe says leadership spurs culture. What the Dana White situation reveals that there is culture issues about being a good citizen at the UFC. Well, and the other thing this does is, what's going to happen the next time a UFC fighter hits his wife?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to cut him? Well, how can you cut him? You didn't cut Dana White. You're telling fighters in the UFC, you're not going to get fired if you hit your wife, if you're involved in domestic violence. That's what you're saying. Josh Lovren says hurting him financially would hurt the UFC, wouldn't it?
Different, but in a different sense. Like, if you think about it operationally speaking, putting him on a 30-day leave, maybe it's a thing where publicly you put him on a 30-day leave, but behind the scenes he's still running things. Maybe I don't know, but my point is that Dana is not wrong about what he said yesterday, but also Dana can't be allowed to sit up there and say that and have no punishment.
Correct. And while you guys are hitting the like button right now, give us a thumbs up. That would be amazing. I think it is really interesting to me that this is who we are as a sports fan now. There's a lot of people who don't believe that Dana White did anything wrong because his wife hit him first. And I'm just telling you that's not correct. It's not. And this idea that somehow this is a matter of equality, that's not what this is. That's not what this is. You have to, Dana White's got to understand who he is and where he is.
Yeah.
His wife is responsible for her behavior, drunk or sober. She should have some accountability. And I am certain inside of their marriage she does. But here's the issue. She's not the president of the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
She's not a public figure who's being held to a higher standard. Well, neither is Dana White, because he's a public figure not being held to a higher standard.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. And again, I go to Bob Iger and Disney. How does this play for Disney?
Facts.
One of your incredibly important partners at ESPN. Remember, ESPN TV, ESPN.com, ESPN the app, and ESPN Plus all carry massive amounts of UFC programming.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge deal. This is a huge, huge deal. It's huge. Alex Cooley, sure, walk away, but to say there's never a reason, come on, there's never a reason to put your hands on a woman.
There's not.
And listen, if she's got a gun pointed at your head, okay, do what you got to do. She slapped him in a bar in Mexico.
You're really telling me he needed to slap her back?
And you're telling me he needed to haul off and slap her to the point where she fell to the ground.
Come on.
That's not who we are as men.
Be better now.
I'm telling you, that's not who we are as men. And I don't know what it would take for me to hit my wife. I can't imagine a scenario. I don't want to imagine a scenario. I can tell you unequivocally, and we have had some arguments, just the same as every couple has arguments. I've never, ever contemplated violence of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
Of any kind. I just don't believe in it. I just don't believe in that. So for me, it's not what I do. Troy Cushing says, you tell him, Jake, drop ship that Forex gold, save the rap for Snoop.
Pack your shit. Let's go.
Love you, Mont. Well, I'm a better rapper than Snoop Dogg. If you're in the member chat on Instagram, you know that. Dallin Sproul says 30 days of no coming into the office. Stay home, Dana. Don't pay him for 30 days. I don't know. Fine him 30 days of salary if that's the way you feel about it. Fat Jesus says, you're telling me he doesn't have executives close to his role that could give interim control to? How much damage could that person do in 30 days? That's my point. And what I'm saying is find the guy 30 days of pay. if you're so worried about the void he would leave, fine him 30 days of pay.
Yeah.
But that's my point. Yeah. Nothing.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, so again, Dana White is right with what he said there, but also Dana White can't be allowed to sit up there and define what his punishment is. It's not up to Dana White. It's up to the owners. It's up to the people who are in, controlling position of the business. That's just the reality of the situation. And the real problem is, if we really want to get to the balls of this conversation, the people who are in control of the UFC are unknown to the world, right?
Correct.
Like, if I said to Jimmy down the street, hey, do you know who owns the UFC? Like, do you know like who has the controlling interest? Well, Dana White. No, not Dana White. Although he does have a big share. I'm pretty confident we can go and research it, but I'm pretty sure that there is a controlling interest that owns 51%. And whoever that person is needs to do something about this. And the problem is, and my fear is nothing will be done because, again, what do we see play out here? Okay, the event happens, the TMZ tape comes out at World's Outrage. Great. Then like a week, 10 days goes by. Nothing happens. Then, I can't remember who it was, but he got a letter sent to him or to the UFC saying, hey, you're not doing anything about Dana White. Let's get it going here. Let's move it along.
Well.
And now Dana's up on a dais talking about his punishment and how leaving doesn't really punish him. Well, unfortunately, that's not up to you, Dana. I don't disagree with you, Dana, but it's not up to you. That's the issue.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly interesting, the parallel of this WWE sale as compared to this situation with the UFC. Did you guys see that the WWE basically has been sold to the Saudis? And it's simply just putting the ink on the paper now. And what's really interesting is, look at Vince McMahon came back. And he is... I mean, if we're ranking detestable human beings, he's far, far, far further up the list compared to Dana White. But nobody's talking about that with the WWE. Yet here we are talking about Dana White. And I agree that Dana White should be held to a higher standard because he runs a professional sports league. If Roger Goodell slapped his wife.
On tape.
If Adam Silver slapped his wife. If Gary Bettman slapped his wife.
But think about it. What's the difference there, though? And I think this is crucial. It's the NFL.
Yeah.
It's the biggest sporting organization on the planet. Right? It's Roger Goodell, the commissioner. He's never... Dude, if a tape surfaced of Roger Goodell participating in domestic violence in his marriage, dude, I don't even know, like... It may take a month to get Buddy fired, but he would be fired. There's no doubt about it. And so to me, that's why I say this isn't a complex issue. And I'm not really here for, Alex, I love you, bro. And all these people talking about how, like, hey, she hit him first and this is ridiculous. Like, I'm not here for that, dude. The reality is he hit his wife. You're not getting away from it. And he wants to live in a world where he gets to self-define his punishment. And I'm telling you, that's inappropriate. And while he's not wrong, he should be punished. And the punishment should be a 30-day salary fine, if not $1 million, in my opinion. And he should be gone for at least 30 days, if not 60 days, in my opinion.
Brett Robbins, how do you know she wasn't coming for his eyes on the next attack? Who cares? Who cares about the next attack? We're not in the business of wondering or guessing or forecasting, Mrs. Dana White's next attack. I care about what I saw in the video in Mexico. I don't understand this obsession with, well, what if she, or look at her. I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about the president of the UFC who makes millions of dollars to run a sports league, on tape slapping a woman in a bar in Mexico over the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
It does not matter what she did. And until you conform to that and understand that, you're always going to want to say, hey, it's like this idea that, so many people in the YouTube comments yesterday were like, women want equal rights. Well, he gave her equal rights. No, he didn't. What he did is he domestically abused his wife.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he did. And I don't understand why we can't come around to the fact that, look at Dana White's size.
Do you understand?
Look at his build.
Like, why would you, and this is what's always baffled me. This is what's always baffled me, with all due respect to Brett.
You don't put your hands on a woman.
Why are we interested in having a conversation about equal rights with women when it comes to physicality? It's so, with all due respect, I love the women in my life. With all due respect, if I punch you in the face, you're getting dropped. It's like a physical, biological, hey, men are built in a different way than women. So we're really going to sit here and talk about how oh, well, women want equal rights and she got equal. Like, that's one of the most asinine things I've ever heard. Like, what happened to class in men? What happened to, like, being a polished individual? Somebody who, I don't know, doesn't get drunk to the point in Mexico and feels like it's okay to beat on your wife. Like, I just don't understand why that's cool and why you guys want to point that out.
And the idea of she got put in her place is it's insulting. That is
like,
just,
what do you mean put in her place?
That's barbaric.
Do you understand? Like, do you have with all due respect, because I don't like tearing people down. I'm not trying to do that, but this gets me going a little bit. Do you have no sense of, hey, I have to be the bigger person here? My wife slapped me, and yeah, that didn't really hurt too much, did it? I'm not really feeling that tomorrow. But you know what? She is.
There comes a higher level of responsibility.
Yeah, dude. Like,
when you are the president of the UFC, it doesn't matter if a guy walked up behind you and punched you in the face. It doesn't matter. The president of the UFC in a bar brawl in Mexico, it's
a bad look.
Yeah.
It's a bad look.
Yeah. All right. Dustin Mercer, the newest member of the Monty Show clan. What's up? Everybody, welcome Dustin as a member of the show. Dustin, good to see you. You now have access to our exclusive members-only video that we post every day. You now have access to our exclusive Monty member-only chat on Instagram. Make sure you DM Jake, SLC Jake, at Instagram. Follow him. He's got like 3 followers on Instagram.
Yeah, it's kind of pathetic, but
somebody needs to follow Jake on Instagram.
Yeah, I am the gatekeeper of the group, okay?
He is the gatekeeper of the group. Hook it up, SLC Jake. On Instagram, and again, if you haven't joined the group, make sure you do that. I just put that link right there in the chat. It's $9.99 a month. It gets you access to the Instagram chat, obviously exclusive content, but it also gets you things like first access to our exclusive merch. Working on some really cool merch right now. Can't wait to drop that. By the way, did you guys now know that our friends at YouTube offer a merch store?
It's coming, people. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's coming. So we have a lot going on. We have this March 10th birthday bash. I'm going to be 50 on February 19th. March 10th, we're having a birthday bash right here at Maverick Center. Cannot wait. We are so close to announcing the newest guest that's going to join us all at that event.
Yes.
Members will know about it first. Members will get invited first. It's going to be an amazing night. Make sure that you hit the join button. As Dustin Mercer did. Dustin, appreciate you very much. Let's finish up this Dana White conversation real quick. Salty Drunk says, calm down, Jake. It's a conversation, not a dictatorship.
Yeah, well, here's the difference, dude. Here's the difference. I have a pretty strong belief based on the stuff that I see in our world on pretty much a daily basis that men have lost sight of the responsibility we have in the world, meaning it doesn't matter if a female hits you, dude.
Yeah,
it just doesn't matter, man.
And listen, that's my opinion, and I agree to a certain extent. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I am not trying to dictate what morals are. I was joking about moral compasses and whatnot. I was totally kidding. Your moral compass is yours. What you feel like is right is knock yourself out. I don't in my life and in my code, I will never put my hands on a woman. I just won't do it.
Yeah.
Violence in relationships is never going to end well.
How different does this tape look if Dana White's wife hit him and he reacted properly? If he hadn't hit her back, if he had,
just walked away.
What would TMZ probably would have put out an article or something saying, oh, well, Dana White's wife doesn't like him or something, or some dramatic, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there would have been some story on how they have issues in their marriage. Dana wouldn't be sitting up on a dais talking about abusing his wife, and he'd be able to sleep at night. And that's what I'm saying. As men, We have to make better decisions.
Yes.
The conversation isn't about, hey, she hit him first and he hits her back and he put her in her, like, that's just such a childish take, in my opinion. With all due respect, like, it's not about that. Now, you're probably going to go to the extreme and you're going to say, well, if some woman had a baseball bat and hit you, what would you do? It's like, okay, cool, dude. That's obviously a little bit different. Obviously, like, that's different than some female slapping you.
Yeah.
But, like, let's not go to the extremes here. Can we not just have a realistic conversation?
Yeah. All right, there you go. There's your moral compass for the day.
Good talk.
Do we feel better?
Good talk. It really bothers me, dude, that men, I feel like on a daily basis I see, and I'm not really talking about the comment section, I'm really just more talking about, like, things I see in the news, the classic Florida man article that pops up in the news cycle. Like, you just see stuff and you're like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
What went through your mind?
But I also think we as men have always struggled with embracing the fact that we have to be the alpha. We have to be the leader. We always have to be on the high ground.
I have to set the standard.
It's what we are. It's what we are to, in my opinion, what we are expected to do in society. And I agree that there's a different conversation about equality and different conversation. As men, we are always held to a higher standard. As men, we are called to be leaders. And I think as men, it is our duty to mentor our children. It is our duty. You know, Dana White, the one thing that really hit home with me is Dana White talked about the conversations he and his wife had with their kids. Imagine how difficult it is for Dana White's kids to watch their dad and mom have a physical fight in public.
Mm-hmm.
You know how difficult that is? That is why, in my opinion, we as men have to always take the high ground.
Yeah.
Because it just does not go well. And if we're going to surmise that, you know, she was going to hit him again, well, let's surmise then that he walks away. What happens if he walked away? To me, there is a give and take on that stuff. And these conversations aren't easy. But as men, I think we've always had issues with embracing our position in society. And these conversations usually are very convenient. You know, like, hey, we want to be leaders. Okay. Well, okay, we don't want to be a leader on domestic violence, but when it comes time to get paid, I want to be the highest paid.
Mm-hmm.
Or when it comes time to, well, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get to pick and choose adversity in your life.
Usually, you don't get to pick and choose when it's easier, when it works out for you, dude.
Yeah.
But what you do get to pick and choose is how you react to everything. And again, as we say, I feel like almost every day lately, it's really not the issue at hand. That's the issue.
Nobody
it's how you
said,
react.
wait. Brett Robbins said you basically said his wife did nothing wrong. I've never said that, not one time. Nobody on this show has ever said that.
You're missing the point, my man.
Nobody has ever said that. Kanai Johnson, we as fathers need to understand that if this was your daughter getting slapped down like a dog, is it okay then because she hit him first? It's not. It's not. You know, Lopes fan Gabe, if Dana White slapped her in public, I'd hate to know what he's done in private. And that's the harder part as well. How many times have they had a domestic violence incident in the past?
Mm-hmm.
What do we not see? What do we not know?
I want to make sure we're on the same page about this concept, though, because, you know, and Brett, you and I clearly disagree here, and that's okay. That's okay. That's what the show's about, disagreeing and having these conversations. But I'm a little surprised we disagree, if I'm being honest. I don't understand why it's so hard to process. We're not talking about his wife. We're just not. We're talking about
that's right.
The reaction to something negative that happened to Dana White. Right? Can we all agree? Can we all agree that that's a fair characterization? Hey, something negative happened to Dana White in Mexico in his family. If you just characterize it as that, we should all agree on that. Next, I want to say, dude needs to react better. Like, I'm sorry, man. It's not just that you're the president of the UFC. It's not just that you're, you know, a dad, a husband, an influential, impactful figure in you know, your people's lives. Like, you have to be better. And we did this whole thing yesterday about, like, you know, having a better relationship with yourself and doing little things, and like it all sort of plays together. You can't just, like, You can't skip over that.
No, and I think that part of it's got to be very tough for Dana White.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how I'm a big fan of personal accountability. And I just don't know how you look yourself in the mirror after you did that. How do you watch that video man, that'd be crazy to me. That would absolutely be crazy to me. But I appreciate the conversation, guys. I know that these conversations are not easy, and I know that we all are passionate about it, and we have different feelings. But you know what? Understand that your opinions are valued here, and we may disagree with them, and we may passionately disagree with them, but we appreciate that you guys share your opinions. We really do, because I think that's a very difficult thing to do in a lot of spaces and places.